Going on there, folks? Good evening. Welcome back here on this Monday night. It is the Earthmaster here. About 11 o'clock here, West Coast time, California. Taking a look at the latest solar weather activity. Goodness, did we see a long duration event today? Something that I have not seen in quite a while. The current imagery here, area of interest out on the southwestern limb of the sun. That has since calmed down, but earlier, goodness, we've seen a dramatic increase in solar flare activity and also long duration solar flare events. We are still currently experiencing a major proton event right now, with the polar regions being affected by this S2. I believe it reached up to an S2 solar radiation storm. It was highly dynamic here. I want to show you guys the data link here on the 48-hour video. Let's see if we can pull this up. I think there we go. Watch over here amongst the sunspot region on the southwestern quadrant of the sun. I may have to slow it down because it is in fast speed here. Watch this area. Watch this huge explosion. Boom, right there. So we're going to have to slow this down just slightly to see what was going on here across the area. Let me speed this up just a little bit. Right about... Oh, goodness. It's going to make it difficult. It's going to make it difficult here. But this area on the southwestern quadrant of the sun has seen numerous flaring activity ever since it got somewhat out of view. And today was a dynamic setup here. A huge explosion on the southwestern quadrant of the sun that produced some long duration M flare activity. Let me show you guys this event right here. So look at this on the GOES X-ray flux 1 minute data. This is something I haven't seen in quite a while. A long duration, and this lasted for, well, an hour or so, maybe longer. We're still kind of coming down from that. That produced a massive plasma eruption from that sunspot area. I don't believe it's facing Earth. I don't think it's, well, obviously, with this view, it's not facing Earth, but we could get potentially a glancing blow from that. We'll have to watch for the Space Weather Prediction Center in terms of, the effects here on Earth, but that is something I have not seen in quite a while. Here is, let's see here. It looks like he posted a YouTube video, but here is the potential CME from that. That was a massive southwestern explosion. Check it out on his channel if you want. It's strong flare and a CME. But goodness, that that thing was just incredible to watch here. Let me check out this data link here on the SDO site. 48-hour video. Oops, let me go back here. Double check this. This is obviously a beautiful image here of the sun. Watch over here on the southwestern quadrant again. You're going to see some major plasma arches going on here. This thing has already produced numerous M flares by then. But watch over here as it starts to get out of view. Look at that flaring and even further flaring right there. I think we'll see a better view of this tomorrow because this thing just... this is about the start of the chaos. Look at that. It's almost like the sun's going to explode. It was a dramatic M flare event, something I haven't seen in quite a long time. It did not peak up into the X flare category, only an upper M flare, but this was a major long duration event and something, like I said, something I haven't seen in quite a while. The current image here shows some flaring off on the northern hemisphere while this is calming down, but I still think, oh goodness, this thing was lighting up like a major explosion. Almost looked like the southwestern quadrant of the sun was going to explode in a huge event. That's about the best I can explain it. Right now things have calmed down. That is all coming from sunspot number 3363 over here on the southwestern edge of the sun. Barely in view. So that did spark up an S2 solar radiation storm. Now, radiation storms, what are they? They are It's basically a solar proton event, right? We had a proton event here with this energy from the solar flaring that was kicking up. This was not, obviously there was a CME that was produced, but that is a separate event from what's going on today. A lot of protons that were produced, and they were headed towards the Earth that sometimes can travel up to 10,000 kilometers a second. That's about 30 minutes that it reaches from the sun to the Earth. Can you imagine that? That is crazy. So the S scale here, the S1, S2, S3, S4, S5 is the solar radiation storm scale, and we've seen a S2 today. Now we're looking at a regular interval of roughly about 25 per cycle, and this affects the high frequency and low frequency navigation systems here. We have not seen an S5 in some time. We're looking at fewer than 1 per cycle, and that creates some major issues there. We're talking about no HF in the HF frequencies, high frequency communications in the polar regions, and position errors may make navigation operations extremely difficult. Loss of some satellites and memory impacts cause loss of control. Unavoidable high radiation risk for astronauts and the EVA and high latitude aircraft passengers. So the S5 is ones that we don't want to interact with. Those can create, they can actually knock out satellites in the into space, right, and create loss of control. They could crash easily back into Earth. So S5 was definitely not happening today. We only seen an S2. Now, a lot of times here, you know, there's a little bit of confusion on the flaring activity that we've seen here, and CMEs. Now, CMEs are produced by the explosion there in that solar flare. Almost within about 30 minutes to an hour, we get the effects from a solar flare, a large solar flare. But it takes up to about 2 to 3 days to get the CME impact here on Earth. And that can be potentially more damaging than a solar flare, right? You got the brightness of the solar flare that does create some issues there in the ionosphere. But a CME, an Earth-directed major CME, is what created the Carrington event back in 1859. A lot of folks heard about this. That was a major solar flare, major subsequent CME that lit up, literally caught fire to the telegrams out here on Earth. That, you know, to think about that is unreal, because these days we're dependent on everything electrical. But back in 1859, looks like in September, there was a very bright solar flare. Now, I did a little bit of studies on this. We've seen a, they're estimating probably between an X45, which is a tremendously large solar flare, with a subsequent CME that was Earth directed. So that was basically a kill shot, so to speak. You can get the and there was actually stronger ones than this back in history, but we're just covering the Carrington event. So that event right there sparked a huge event here on Earth, and this was a few months before the solar maximum, right? We're talking about a little bit, we're actually kind of reminiscing about the solar maximum right now. We're kind of elevated before the solar maximum. That did create some major auroras across the globe. We're talking about worldwide. Auroras were seen around the world. Those in the northern hemisphere as south as the Caribbean. Goodness. Imagine that. So the auroras were so bright there in the Rocky Mountains, the gold miners thought it was a morning. So they they started making breakfast. Goodness. Okay, so, you know, we know a lot more right now than we do back in the gold mining days. Those folks didn't have a cell phone in their pocket. They did not have navigation systems in their car. They did not obviously have a car back then. So the telegraphs out here in some areas of Europe and North America failed, and in some cases, they gave the operators of the telegraph some electric shocks, and even caught some of those on fire. Could you imagine that? Having this type of event directly located at Earth in this day and age. Everyone is dependent on electricity and these electronic devices. That's 100% fact. You're listening to me on either a TV, your phone, whatever, maybe a PlayStation, I don't know. But we're talking about a kill shot that could easily put an end to this type of activity. There has been other large events throughout history. We did have a geomagnetic storm that knocked out power across sections of Quebec. Remember that? Back in 2012, it was a Carrington class super solar storm, but it was not exactly directed to Earth. It was just barely missed Earth. So back in 2012, we had almost a Carrington event that probably would have wiped out a lot of our power grids. The unfortunate thing is that we have seen larger storms than the Carrington event. We're talking about 10 times more the size of the Carrington event back in 774 to 775. And there's a whole explanation as to how they discovered that there in the Wikipedia article. So it's we're kind of cruising around, right? We're enjoying our free ride here on this planet and enjoying these electronic devices that we're talking on right now. Got YouTube set up. Amazing that I can talk to anyone here in the world. It's absolutely incredible, and I appreciate everyone out there in the world. But that can end in a blink of an eye. I'm not even joking, with a major CME that were to be Earth directed. Obviously, we would probably have at least a 2-day notification in regards to that. Solar flare activity obviously does affect the ionosphere, but the main threat here, where's Wikipedia? See if they show that. The main threat's going to be the CME. The geomagnetic storm was most likely the result of a coronal mass ejection, CME. So that is the main threat. Obviously, flaring does affect us here on Earth, but it's that huge mass of plasma charged particles that result from that major solar flare that is the damage that can take place here on Earth. And we're talking about loss of satellites, right? Navigation systems. So that's one thing. I don't really use my navigation systems all that much. When I go to Texas and congested areas, yes, I do. But we're talking about loss of control of satellite activity up in space, right? Starlink satellites have, I don't know how many freaking satellites up there right now. We have a lot of satellites that provide internet activity out there. So imagine all those just come crashing down to Earth. That would not be good. We're we're obviously very dependent on solar activity, solar energy, so to speak, but that can come crashing down in a blink of an eye. Not even joking, folks. An event like this is something to pay attention to. That CME, we'll check this out as the Space Weather Prediction Center reviews it. I don't think we're going to have a major effect from that. It was, only an M flare, but that was one of the longest ever duration M flares I've seen here since I've been studying solar weather activity. It was a huge event that brightened up this whole area here on the southwestern quadrant. Something I've never seen before in my studies out here of the solar weather activity. So that should tell you something. We are headed to solar maximum here in 2025, but I think we're looking at that maybe sooner. So what do we have right now? we're saying goodbye, right? That was the magical goodbye here of this sunspot, which, by the way, we need to make this in history. 3363, one of the longest M duration events out there in history that I could see throughout time. 3363 is saying goodbye. We are looking at a couple numerous sunspots here that are currently facing Earth. Remember that sunspot, right? A week ago, this thing was ginormous. It almost looked like this here, with a ginormous red spot included there on the northern section of that sunspot core, but it was down here. That thing dynamically grew as it got out of view here and just produced numerous M flares and one of the most long duration flares that I've seen out there, but not Earth directed. So what do we have to deal with? We have this one right here. Look at the sunspot region. We have a numerous amount of core instability here within the sunspot region. That's going to be number 3373. Watch that pretty closely. 3372, as big as it is here on the globe, or at least on the sun, it's not dynamically complex as this image here, the sunspot region. So watch this very closely. That's the main threat aside from down here. This is, gotta say goodbye. That was a beautiful, one of the most spectacular departing sunspots that I've seen in a long time. I don't know if this one's going to top it off, but hey, we're entering into the solar maximum, so we will watch that. 3373. Right now, 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 50, X flare around 20% chance, proton event obviously above that, and we're still seeing elevated conditions out here across the higher levels, proton levels, increasing out here on the polar regions. A lot of folks saying they're feeling aggravated, having issues, arguments, stuff like that. And believe it or not, that does play a part on the human nature out here on this planet. Today I felt a little bit of irritability, I think is the word I can think of. I'm definitely not a violent person, not an aggravated person, but I did feel irritability over little stuff out here. It could be the heat. It could be because of this. The ionosphere is majorly being impacted out here across the Earth right now. But I do appreciate all the comments coming in from everyone out there reporting what they may be feeling, because obviously everything that takes place here in the solar regions affects us little ants here on Earth. Basically we're just little ants here on the surface of the Earth that are being affected by the solar weather activity. Goodness, what a day. What an incredible day for solar weather activity. Looks like we're still currently seeing a little bit of aurora forecast at the polar regions there due to a CME that was produced, but the enhancement there with the CME and the proton event is just kind of stirring things up here for this planet. We'll continue to watch that, right? So what do we have for earthquake activity? Any major earthquakes? Because a lot of folks wondering, well, during space weather events, we're looking at major earthquake activity. It hasn't happened. This is one of those times where we haven't seen any major earthquake activity during a major solar weather event. Let's go ahead and zoom into the west coast here, California. Very minimal activity across the Sierra Nevada into Northern California. Within the last hour, seen a little bit of activity lighting up here across Southern California, but this is all very minimal. Not a whole lot of events going on there across the Southern California area or the western states. Look at that. A little bit of activity south of Mexicali, but it's very minimal. Yellowstone National Park. Handful of smaller earthquakes. Let's go ahead and check out the Yellowstone overview here of the super volcano. And right now, I don't have any fear-mongering to preach to you folks here. There's no doom and gloom. There's no magma movement. There's no upswelling of the land out here across Yellowstone. No unusual activity to take note of. And in fact, earthquake activity is very minimal at best throughout the Yellowstone area. The rest of the states here, very minimal activity throughout Oklahoma and Texas. Nothing going on across the eastern seaboard there. Pretty quiet. Puerto Rico area as well. The South America region here, a handful of earthquakes earlier this morning. A look at the 3D globe shows some of that older earthquake activity with a couple smaller quakes here centered around the center of... That was a little odd. The center of the Peru-Chile Trench here. Notice that earthquake activity kind of just in between these two quakes there from yesterday. We'll continue to watch that. Not a whole lot going on, though. Hawaii, there's... wow, the globe shows nothing. Let's see what we got out there. I don't know why it's showing nothing, but I know we have earthquake activity out there, but it looks like mostly from earlier today. Couple twos out there. Nothing going on across the Big Island far as any major activity goes. It's all below the 2.5 threshold. Across the Western Pacific, things are increasing. We're seeing a 3.6 out here across the Java Trench. Indonesia Islands area, mostly some 3s and 4s out there. We have been monitoring a swarm of activity here south of the Philippines, some 5s, 3s, and 2s. Coming up here, no major quake activity yet, but we'll continue to watch that region. And across the Fiji Islands area, Tonga, and the New Zealand area, a little bit more activity kicking up there. Let's go ahead and check out the USGS model. Magic, it disappears. 4.8 Kermadec Islands earlier this morning, it looks like, 10 kilometers deep, but it looks like we've seen a little bit more activity than what the USGS is reporting there. So that's just the facts that is coming from the EMSC data globe. New Zealand, let's go ahead and check out the New Zealand area real quick. GeoNet servers is the spot to go in terms of earthquake activity. 3.4 11 hours ago. So let's go ahead and check out the most recent activity. Couple ones, some other smaller earthquake activity out there. Looks like a 3.7 north of the North Island area. A couple other smaller quakes out there as well. Let's give a real quick glance here at the earthquake drums. This will give us a good indicator of anything that may be of suspicion as far as earthquake activity goes. But as you can see, and as I can see, there's nothing going on out there across New Zealand for now. Definitely continue to watch, though, the western areas of Pacific of the Filipino plate. Out in Greece, we've got a 4.2 coming in early this morning, it looks like. Nothing major going on out there currently. Look at the earthquake 3D globe, shows very minimal movement going on. We do have a 4.0 out here across the... let's go ahead and check this out real quick. EMSC. Let's go ahead and see what's going on across the area. They have upgraded. I don't know if it's an upgrade or not, but they've updated their information out here as far as the earthquake reporting goes there. We did see a 4.0. This is a pretty recent earthquake. Notice the UTC time. 4.0 Canary Islands. Volcanic activity there, I believe. We'll watch that pretty closely. That is 51 kilometers deep there into the Canary Islands, Spain region. Aside from that, the Atlantic Ocean looks pretty calm and clear. The tremor activity here across the Cascadia tonight, centered mostly, look at that, Olympia area. This is well underneath the Olympia area, by the way. Seen 146 epicenters of tremor. That is associated with the Cascadia subduction zone. I don't think we've seen any adjustment going on up there as far as earthquake activity goes. Things are very quiet for now, but we'll watch this. This is tremor activity, meaning that the Cascadia subduction zone is active, applying further strain upstream. All right, let's see what else we have here across the region. Yeah, I think that's about it. Let's real quick glance here at the space weather activity once again. See if anything else is blowing up. Goodness, it's been a crazy day, let me tell you, for that. That was an enormous bright area earlier this evening, earlier this afternoon. I was certain that that thing was going to produce a massive X-flare, similar to the Carrington event, by the way, which was an X45. But goodness, it didn't. It did not produce an X45. Looking at the top 30 solar flares of solar cycle 25, we're only at an X2.2. So imagine an X45 with a Earth-directed CME, and you can pretty much assume the effects here on Earth are going to be very dramatic. But so far this cycle, only an X2.2. But yeah, only. Those are strong flares, but I don't think we've seen anything that was majorly Earth-directed. It's almost like a roulette wheel. You know, where it lands is what you get. And the sun is huge. The time is huge, right, between major solar weather events, but it only takes that one kill shot that could affect life here on Earth. And that's something a lot of people have to think about here. We could obviously we could be looking at loss of communications here worldwide. Internet, the stream would go down. I would be stuck out here in the dark, and no information would be provided across the world if we were to lose the internet and everything else out there. So, and that's possible. Everything is electronically dependent. Your solar panels up on your roof, navigation systems, everything like that is very subjective to well, just going away. Current day 1 severe weather threat, not a whole lot out there. Looks like some windy conditions and some hail going on out there across a large portion of the country right now. Here in my neck of the woods, we got 78 degrees, 71% humidity, 67% dew point, and that's creating a little bit of humid environments out here right now. And that's not going to go away. We're looking at some major long-term heat indexes out here for the California area. Looking out throughout July. Look at this. No relief in sight. Look at the East Coast. You guys are, looks like around the 21st, 22nd. You guys are looking at some cooler weather out there across the eastern portion of the country. California, meanwhile, will cook and bake. And unfortunately, I knew that was going to happen. So I got the AC full blast. And that's just how it's going to be until we get some cooler conditions out here. It's not going away, unfortunately. All right, folks, make sure you guys subscribe while you're here. We have definitely gained quite a few new subscribers. But as always, if you want the latest information statement here, the latest updates here in terms of factual data here from NASA, space weather activity, the USGS, make sure you guys subscribe to this channel. We are getting very close to the 100,000 subscriber giveaway. Each subscriber makes it possible here, so make sure you guys subscribe. We'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow morning sometime. Stay safe out there, and enjoy your beautiful Monday night. Peace out.